Welcome. Hey, everyone. Welcome to episode number 2 of the Finding Your Flock podcast. Very excited for our guest today. We have Kara, who I met about almost 2 years ago at a FlockX event in Grand Rapids. Kara is a long-time resident of Grand Rapids, very active in the community, mostly very active in the food and wine scene. But as I recently found out, she's also dabbles in a little bit of dance and theater. So I'm really excited to have her on board to chat to us today. I'll let her do a brief introduction, then we'll kick it off. So Kara, welcome. So excited to have you. Anything you want to add to my intro?
No, thanks, Josh and Erkan for having me. Like Josh said, I love food and I love wine. So most of my favorite experiences revolve around those two things. But I'm also really passionate about community. So I'm excited to chat about that today.
Okay, well, great. That leaves me the perfect place for me to start off with is when it comes to all the communities that you're active in, be it food, wine, dance, theater, active sports, how do you go about finding your community? And it might be different from your perspective because like you're a local, you've lived there all your life, but like what are those kind of motions you go through?
Yeah, so the main place I get most of my information is from Instagram. So by following those places that I go to a lot on that platform. So then when they're posting things they're excited about in their stories or different things like that, I can make note of it and either look further into it or follow a link if it's an event you have to RSVP for or something along those lines. In regards to dance classes, I did take dance as a kid and was looking to get back into it, and then COVID hit, so I was just having a hard time figuring out where I could go. And our local theater, Civic Theater, has great classes that I could walk to, which was a big thing I was looking for, something I wouldn't have to get in my car and go to. It's really easy for me to get there. So that's been my most recent favorite activity. They do, sessions winter, fall, summer. So that's a lot of fun. But otherwise, too, word of mouth. So once you start kind of going to those things, you hear about other things. So we go to, my sister and I will go a lot to these wine events that our local wine store Grand Rapidian will have. We'll meet people there. They'll chat and they'll be like, "Oh, did you hear, about this one that this place is doing?" And so the other weekend, actually, there was a fundraiser for something in Grand Rapids that was a wine tasting, and we saw so many people that we see just at different wine events because that was so much larger scale. And so it's just funny, you see the same people and be like, "Hey, what are you excited about? What's cool that's going on that I might have missed?" So yeah, it's just actually finding the stuff, and then getting out there, and then your platform grows so much once you actually start seeing people and participating in those events.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting part because the one thing I was going to ask you was obviously outside of food and wine that have like designated facilities like restaurants, bars, those are like, if you go to a restaurant, you can find food and you can find wine, but like, you don't always know where you can go to find other people that are into dance, right? Unless you go to a dance class. So like, do you see them outside of like the actual classes? Like, do you hang out at specific places outside of that, or just sort of as you?
Not too much yet, just because with this particular class, because how they run, they're short sessions, so they're only a few weeks. So if I have the same person, there's one girl who was in my beginner class with me for a while, and I would see her at these things called hipster discos. So it was her scene. So I would see her there, but because she was like a repeat in my classes, she was someone I connected with, and now I follow her on Instagram, so I'll see her at some events throughout. But otherwise I'm not. So I take the dance classes because I enjoy the dance. I'm not actually interested in being a show, whereas a lot of people taking class there, it's the other way around. They're taking the classes because they want to be in a show or they're planning on being in the show. But the community is really, really nice. So I think if I were to be like, "Hey, like, what are you guys doing?" I could easily like hop in. But because I'm not in that other aspect of, "Hey, I'm going to be in this show with you," and that sort of thing, that's why I'm not seeing them as much outside of it. But I do know, a lot of them are involved in many of the theaters. So Civic Theater is probably our largest community theater in town, but we have a Circle Theater that's at one of our colleges. There's a Jewish theater, so there's a lot of other theater options that I know people kind of cross over to. So you can hear more about the other shows that way too. Because I do like to go to one. I'm going to one on Saturday. They're doing Murder at the Orient Express, I think it is if I got the name right. So, I'm going to that one on Saturday, and I know about it because I'm taking the dance class there. So even though there's no dancing in that show, but no, it'll still be really good.
And then from like the wine and food perspective, do you have like food clubs or wine clubs that you go groups? Do you guys go out to these different places together? Like
Yeah, so
they've now become your friends, or
yeah, so there are wine clubs, and I did one year and it ended up with too much wine because I'm a very social drinker. So like I'm not like drinking a ton at home unless I'm having, people over. So it was great, for COVID when you would have people over for like a porch party to have that wine on hand. But then after that kind of ended, I was like, I have all this wine and I'm not drinking it. So so I'm not doing the wine club anymore. But yeah, the wine club, when I was in it, would have events, tastings that you could go to and that sort of thing. So once I was on the list, I still got sent the information about that, even though I wasn't in the wine club anymore, which was really great. But the great thing about being into food and wine too is when you're traveling, I like to ask people in the service industry like where they go, because they do travel a lot. So they usually have really good recommendations of places to eat and drink, based on what they know you like. So the nice thing about Grand Rapids is it's not super huge. So I do go to the same places a lot because they have rotating menus, so things aren't always the same. But also, the people who work there, they've worked there a long time and they give great advice. So it helps all around.
Okay, well, you gave me, okay, go on.
No, just had a question about the dance side of things. So I see that you've gone there because of passion, right? Like you love it and you wanted to go. And then you said that a lot of people went there because they're going to be at a show or something, so they want to improve that skill. It sounds like it's not as much as I'm doing it for fun because I love it. It's because like I have to reach that XYZ goal of the show in particular. So have you seen, or were you able to sync with other people who are passionate about it? Because a lot of people that I've heard that they would love to get into dance, they struggle with that step, like kind of going and booking that, or kind of that very first step. I think it's the same thing with a lot of other hobbies, or hobbies to be, like that people aim to. So I was just curious as to like, have you met other people who are doing it just for passion?
Yeah.
And any suggestions as to taking that step? Because it seems like you already are more extroverted and you're like open to like meeting people and everything. But for anyone who's listening who is like well, I'm a bit shy, I don't feel as comfortable to like go out there, is it going to be just me? Like, am I going to be able to interact with the other ones and everything? Like, what would be your recommendation there, or what they would be expecting when they go there?
Yeah. So the great thing about the classes I take is there's no recital. So I think that's a big thing to help with the first step is, it's just for you. Like there's some choreography in it. So you're learning a dance that you can practice and show other people if you want to, but there isn't that recital portion, which is really great, I think, especially for an adult who might be trying something new. But then in terms of like a dance, you're in a mirrored room, right? But I couldn't tell you like if other people are great or horrible or missing a step. Like I can't tell. Like the teacher, because they've been doing it so much, can hear, I think, if someone's off, because I take tap dance class, which is like very, very sound based. But I am paying attention to my moves. I'm concentrating so hard on what I'm doing that I'm not really paying any attention to you whatsoever. So I think there's, it's just kind of that self, like, oh my gosh, I'm doing so awful in this class. This person sees it, that's not the case. The person next to you has no idea. So unless it's like, a team, like a swing dance or like a ballroom dance or something where you're really relying on a partner, it's great. I would highly recommend doing the first step. A lot of places will start with a beginner option. And then when you graduate on to do something harder, it's really exciting and it's really fun. In my particular class, the session that I'm taking just started, and the classes are on Saturdays, so it's a small class, but the girls who are in it with me are very long time dancers who the Saturday class works for them. So they're not there during the other class sessions because those are on weeknights. So they're only there on Saturdays, but they are there, for fun. They're excited to kind of keep that skill that they have with their tap dancing. And the teacher did a thing where you kind of just see where everyone was, and I was definitely the worst dancer in the class, but no one knew. We all kind of struggled through this kind of follow the leader type of dance thing, and it was it was fun, and yeah, there was no pressure. So I think it's just finding what works for you. So if going to a recital is what you need to get you to practice and that sort of thing, find the place that's going to have the class every week, for the 16 weeks or whatever, and end in a performance. If it's just something you want to do for fun, hopefully your community offers something like my local theater too, or it's just, it's a fun thing. So yeah.
Yeah, that's all. I think that the whole point of initial first step is quite a daunting piece, but I think, like I say, if you can find like a beginner class and you're going to be with like-minded, like other beginners that don't really care, so it's a good first step. But I just want to take you out of your comfort zone of Grand Rapids for a little bit, because I think you know a lot about Grand Rapids. Like I know you said you like to travel. I know you traveled recently. And so how did you said you like to talk to service professionals. So what did you do when you were out in travels now, try to find, I don't know, maybe you're trying to find like the local dance theater, or like maybe you're trying to find like some other food and wine places. How did you go about doing those? And was it like, were the recommendations good? Like, did you feel like you were welcomed in?
Yeah, so the most recent trip we went on was an all-inclusive resort. So the planning for that one wasn't as intensive. We mainly went to an all-inclusive brand that we had gone to before, and because we knew we liked it. And then, we did a city tour, which was kind of recommended by a guide, and they kind of took us to where we were going. So there wasn't much research involved with that one. But one place that we're hoping to go maybe this fall is Montreal in Canada. Because I hear they do have a great food scene. So I've been starting to like research, where to stay and the best places to eat, in that region as well. And so I kind of start on like a TripAdvisor, that sort of thing, just to kind of see. A lot of people like to write like, oh, if you're here for 2 or 3 days, here's what I did. And then I like to look at the map. And honestly, I look at the map and kind of zoom around. And sometimes I'm like, hey, what's this thing here? I love a Google review. I understand people will sometimes write a bad review just because they're angry about one thing. So I kind of take those with a grain of salt. But I honestly find great places based on just zooming around on the Google Maps. And then again, asking around. It might be, the next dinner I'm at, or if I'm at a restaurant with, someone I know who travels a lot, I might be like, hey, have you ever been here? What do you remember? What were you really excited about? That sort of thing. So I have seen friends post on different platforms, they're traveling to like get advice, and they'll be like, hey, I already have these places down, and I'll just like make note. And like, just in case I ever go back, like I had someone going to, I think, Louisville in Kentucky, and they're like, I already have this restaurant and this restaurant down, like where else, like what am I missing? So sometimes I'll just make note if I have people I'm following who are doing things like that too, asking for advice. So
fair enough. Very cool. And then now just going back sort of, I know at some point you've also organized some of your own events for like the building that you live in, right? So like, I know that you've got a very social building. So like, how do you communicate with those people in a general, like, good attendance? Like, how do you guys communicate within the building? Like, because that's a sense of community, right? Like your building is essential, and how that makes you feel on a day-to-day basis. That's like your local people. How do you go about, organizing those events and getting the word out?
Yeah, so I live in a condo in downtown Grand Rapids. So there are a lot more younger people moving downtown, but a lot of them are a lot older. So their main goal, if they're having something, is they'll email out and kind of do an email blast that way. We do have a building manager who sends emails as well. We have an app that we use, but that's mainly just, if we need to request maintenance or something along those lines. But sometimes in our building specifically, they'll just put like in like a frame something that's going on. So like we have one resident who is really into movies. So he has his whole movie collection, and he will show movies on like Sunday nights, like maybe every other month. And it's stuff that's not like easily streamed, but something that he thinks is really great. And they'll all get together and watch it in our community room. So there's just things like that they do that are cute and fun. But we do have, we're trying to build a downtown neighbor network because there are a lot of buildings downtown, but there's not necessarily like a neighborhood association downtown. So sometimes it's harder to connect with other neighbors if they don't live in your building. So we do right now have like a representative from Downtown Grand Rapids Inc. who tries to rally us all together to make sure we can meet each other and know who your other downtown neighbors are. So she is the one who initially we ran into her, and that's how we ended up at the first Flag X event and met Josh. She's like, hey, I'm going to this thing. And we're like, yeah, we'll go too. So yeah, so she's doing really great work, I think, in getting the downtown neighbors together and communicating more. There's a newsletter that goes out, so if something cool is going on downtown, she can make sure we all know about it. If roads are going to be closed for whatever reason, she lets us know about that too. So yeah.
And I'm interested, and I know we spoke, before we started the recording, a little bit about like the impact of the digital world and meeting in person. Like Erica said, you're seem a very outgoing, extroverted person. I'm interested to hear about like when it came like down to like during the COVID kind of times, like how did like the lack of the ability to like go out and do these things impacted you, because you're a very social person? Like, did you feel like there was an impact that you weren't having these social interactions with your building members or your community members or those kind of things?
Yeah, so our building became very sparse, I would say. A lot of our neighbors had other locations they could go. So if they were scared or didn't want to be in the kind of I don't know, in our community where there's a lot of people, using one elevator, if that's something that made them uncomfortable, that sort of thing, they had another option they could go. And so you did see, a lot of people kind of go and maybe stay at like a beach house they have or something for, a longer period of time, or that sort of thing. I personally got really good at a porch party, inviting people just to hang out outside. I got, wagon, all my stuff ready to go. So to make it easy to try and interact and have people over in like a safe zone. But yeah, and then with other groups, some of my other friend groups, actually, it was not better to connect, but we made the effort to connect a little bit more like virtually, like a meetup like this and that sort of thing. So people I maybe only communicated with like via text, that sort of thing. And we didn't always get together that much. We were seeing each other a lot more like virtually that way too. So, I mean, it was hard. I am very social. I do, like going out and doing things. So it was, a lot more of like, okay, what's this new show that's on now? So we can watch this instead. So it was very different. I made points to, get outside every day, go for walks, that sort of thing. But yeah, it was mainly, I was mainly communicating with my sister who lives in my same building. So she was kind of in my little bubble. There's a few other people, in my building who I considered like in my bubble who I'd see fairly regularly. But otherwise, I was kind of making an effort to spend more time outside, that sort of thing. Good thing about wine is they like to do a nice little virtual So I did, and I think so. I wasn't super into wine pre-COVID, but I did like to go to a wine bar, and so because I wanted to support those local places, that's kind of I finally figured out what the kind of wine I like, and I just went hard. So I know what I like now, and I will do all the wine stuff. So
yeah, because I think the reason why I was asked is that Erica and I have been spending a lot of time just trying to understand the difference in like digital interaction, like as opposed to like face-to-face interaction, but like an in-person interaction, how that changes the meaningfulness of the interaction, that connection. And you mentioned Instagram and a couple of other platforms as well. Like, do you feel like since the rise of sort of social media, you felt more or less connected to your community? Like you say, you use it like for research, but do you engage on those platforms, or is like you use that for research then engage in real life? Like, how do you balance that?
Yeah, so I think it's the second one. I think I use the platforms a lot for research, and then I'll engage in real life. So if someone were to like reach out about like something I post, because I post a lot of wine, so if someone's like, hey, where did you get this? Like I would respond to be like, oh, I was at this restaurant. Like I wouldn't like keep that from them by any means, but yeah, a lot of times it's the other way. I'll see something that I think is interesting, and then I'm going to try and make a point to go to it in person or try to attend or that sort of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of like what we've been hearing.
Mm-hmm.
What I was curious about, like speaking of COVID, there's one thing that it happened to me where after COVID, like my social battery really got like, in a sense, I just, when I go to an event after a couple of hours of human interaction, I kind of get tired. Like the battery just goes low. Like I need to, I feel that crave of going back to my cave, if you may.
Yeah.
So I was just curious, like if is it just me, or like have you guys seen like this trend going on with other people, or
No,
like does it happen to you? Or
Yeah, so I feel like Friday night now is my favorite night to stay in. So the nice thing about, being in downtown Grand Rapids, because it's not super big, if something is going on a weekday, it's easy for me to get to. I usually don't have to commute to it. It's easy for me to go home. And I will try and limit myself to 2 things during the week. And so one of them is usually I play trivia with some friends on a Tuesday. So that's usually one. And so then there might be like one other thing happening. And then, I usually then on Fridays, I'm catching up on my shows, right? Like I just like, it's a day, like you've had a full week of work. You just kind of want to relax. I have probably been doing some social stuff during the week, so I don't want to do anything on a Friday night anymore. So, so I definitely feel you. There are, a few weeks where there's too many cool things going on. I can't limit it to 2. And it might be, a few more things might be happening, but yes, I definitely agree with that, with that post-COVID. So it does. Yeah, you need some time to reset.
yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely, exactly. That's how I've felt, and it's kind of I'm glad it's not just me, because I'm like, what's going on? And I've just recently, started to realize it more and more. Before I was like, I'm just not in the mood, but then I'm like, I wasn't like this before COVID. Like this is actually a new thing that's developed, and I'm trying to break it and kind of like. Because it gives you that, once you realize that, like it pushes me sometimes to stay at home, because I'm like, I'm gonna go for an hour or 2 and then I'm gonna feel tired after, and I'm gonna want to go back, so might as well just stay.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important to go socialize, and a lot of times I'm like, I'm glad I did go out, because like just you got that need.
It's like going to the gym, right? Like no one, like there are some people that really like going to the gym, right? But like going for a run or whatever, you never feel like going for that run. But sometimes you do. But then afterwards, you're like, man, I'm so glad I went. Like it's certain, chemical, hormones and whatever those things are that, gets the juices flowing, the fresh air, that kind of laughter at someone with a joke that's not just yourself. I laugh at my own jokes, but like some people laugh at other people's jokes as well. But it's like you get that good like positive feedback from either like exercising or engaging with nature or engaging with others. That I suppose that's a good thing to say, is like, well, why do we socialize, right? Because there's something that we get back from it, right? Otherwise, like one of my favorite things on the weekend, to be quite honest, is to go over to my friend's house. We just chill and we talk, and that's my one of my third places. That's one of my spots where I go. Like it's their house, right? I take the kids. Their kids are there. We're playing. We're talking. We're having fun. We play a bit of backgammon. But it's that sense of that. It really resembles that kind of third place idea. Right? It's not my home. It's not where I work. But it's another safe space where I feel completely comfortable with people around me that I get a lot of energy from, because I enjoy being in their company. Which is, I suppose, why you would do trivia on Tuesday nights with your friends, or the wine club. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't do it, right? But the thing is, I think to Eric's why thing at the beginning is that if you don't have those things, I think that first step of doing it is probably the hardest part. Like this, not same thing as I haven't exercised in say 6 weeks. The first time going back to exercise is always the hardest one. But once you've done the first one, the second one becomes easier, the third becomes easier. And with everyone kind of so focused on the digital side, that's why I asked how you do it, is that some people would prefer just to socialize digitally and not go because it's quite a scary thing to meet people in person, if you're not used to it. So I wonder, sort of how other sort of new, because a lot of people are moving to Grand Rapids, right? Like it's a growing city. How other people are, when they first arrive, where are they going, and what are their go-tos, and how they're breaking into those communities, because you're pretty settled, right? Do you see a lot of newbie Grand Rapidians coming into town and trying to integrate with some of your sort of flocks that that are there?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Because I do, also go to a lot of luncheons and random things like that too. And even where I work, there was a networking event that it's hard, to go someplace where you might not have a friend to go to. Like my sister and I usually always go places together. So I at least always know I have one person. So sometimes I try and make myself go to things that she can't go to, because I'm like, this is good practice for me to be on my own. Because, I'm pretty chatty, but like my sister is like way chattier. So if I'm going to an event without her, I try and come up with like 2 or 3 relevant questions, like based on what's currently going on. So like if I was going to something tonight where I was by myself, I might interact with new people. I might ask like, hey, are you super pumped about Taylor Swift's new album coming out tomorrow? Just to like have something to talk about. Or if it's, if it was a more formalized wine thing, most of the wine stuff, I would at least see, I think, one person I recognize, but I just try, and have some questions relevant to like what's going on. So like at my work networking event, I was asking people about spring break. Like I myself had just traveled. I knew a lot of people had probably traveled that first week in April, and so it's something to just kind of chat about. So so I think it works. So I think just kind of preparing yourself a little bit. So it's definitely hard to take that jump and go to something by yourself, but most people are, who are there are going to be pretty nice and are going to want to talk to you. And if it's something you're interested in and they're interested in, there's already something in common. So whether it's finding, having 1 or 2 questions in your back pocket so that you can keep a conversation going. Or my dad just sent me an article the other day about how to get out of a conversation. Like if you don't think it's going well, like polite ways if you're stuck in a boring conversation to like get out of it. So just kind of having tools. Yeah.
Tell us 1 or 2 of those things that how do you politely get out of a conversation that you're not enjoying?
Yeah, so one of them was to be like, hey, I was going to actually go get a drink. Like, can I get you something, and that sort of thing. Or if you're really stuck, being like, hey, acknowledging that this person is telling the story and being like, hey, I really want to hear the end of this story, but I have to like go somewhere in like 3 minutes. So like, can we wrap it up? So that way you're still being, and there was one thing about like making it a contest, like someone's talking about something, and trying to like figure out a way to kind of butt in. So like this one guy was talking to someone who was like a vegan. I don't remember the example exactly, and they were like, hey, so you probably wouldn't want to go to this hamburger bar, like, or hamburger restaurant like this. So I don't know, just like trying to do something funny to like, make everyone relax a little bit. But yeah.
The first one I can't promise, because like, if you want to go, I feel like the person would be like, oh yeah, I'm coming too.
Yeah, let me come with you. I know. I'm like, yeah.
So I don't, that, but the other ones, like, they make sense. And has there been a moment where you actually were uncomfortable? Because like, I think there's a lot of people that want to go out and don't feel like going out. It's because that feeling of like something bad can happen. And I love reading about psychology, and it's always good to diffuse it by asking or by hearing an example of like what's the worst can happen. And once you see the worst and your brain says, oh, that's not that bad, then you get back to like, okay, I can take that risk per se, if for lack of a better word. So I was curious, is there it could be funny, it could be something like, anything that you can remember of, maybe a conversation that you would try to get out of, or it was an opportunity, it was a moment where you did not have those backup questions or something, we would love to hear.
Yeah, so I don't know. Sometimes I just kind of wait for people to come to me. Like I might just like perch somewhere. I might have my drink or have a snack and just like perch somewhere and be like, hey, like at a lot of things, there's not enough tall tables or enough places to sit. So sometimes I'm just like, I'll just let people come to me. We'll see what happens. Like I'll find a place where I feel comfortable right now, and I'm just going to wait it out. And hopefully someone will come to me. And if not, it's usually,
I think we're all been there. Like exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like it's one of those moments where you want to go because there's a benefit of going to that session, whether it's a networking session or a social session or a birthday party of someone who you're not so friendly with, and you're walking around like, should I make eye contact? Should I not make eye contact? Because as soon as you make the eye contact, they're going to come up. That it's going to engage something, right? So I think the part you referred to earlier, and you're referring to your sisters, because you're not the first person that Eric and I have spoken to like the last 2-3 weeks. This idea of like a wing person, like you're like the person that you go with, that you're comfortable with. They can help you start the conversation, or like get you out of a conversation, or like your sisters, like your comfort buddy. Like it's always easier to go with your comfort buddy than it is to go with like yourself, because like now you're exposed and you're vulnerable and you haven't got that protective shield around you to like pick you up when you're down. So like I'm very impressed that you like have really acknowledged that and you go and do it yourself, right? Because I had never until I heard about it 3 weeks ago, I'd never really heard of it. Like I on the last couple of business trips that I've been to, I've had to go to events all by myself. And yes, they're all like-minded people. They're either startup founders or those are the types of events that I'm going to. But it's still like I would consider myself like an in-between introvert extrovert. Like once you get to know me, I'm super outspoken, but initially I can be a little bit shy. And like that first move is like really, really difficult sometimes for me. But once you make it, like it makes a big difference. But like sometimes like if I'm there with like a colleague, Devin, or I'm there with Erkin, whatever those things make a difference. So yeah, I'm glad to hear it from someone else as well, because it does make a difference if you've got that person that can get your back when you're going to an event. One thing I just wanted to touch on before the end of the session at some point is that at the beginning of the session, you said you're also very passionate about community in general, right? Outside of the fact that when you say that, do you like read certain articles or books or like follow certain podcasts or follow certain individuals that speak about community and like the tools, what that actually means? Like what other things do you do that, drives your passion for community outside of like your interests?
Yeah, so I mean, I have, my main interests, wine, food, dance, that sort of thing. But what I'm passionate about is our community, is those other things that make the community so great. So in addition to, our local theater, we have museums, we have art, we have live music. We're getting a soccer stadium built. So we're gonna, we have some sports, not big sports, but very fun sports. We're one of the first cities to have professional women's volleyball, and those have been really fun. I love going to those games. So
they're doing really well.
Yeah, it's really fun to watch. So I like those parts of the community that attract people who aren't always I shouldn't say, how should I phrase this, that attract everyone to the community, right? Like I'm very interested in making Grand Rapids a great place for a wide variety of people, not just people who are into wine and food, right? So people who have kids, very family friendly, that sort of thing too. So yeah, so I'm very lucky because I go to a lot of events, at our public museum. They have great events about the history of Grand Rapids. They have a theater where they can host other groups that come in. Our neighbor is in the Women's City Club, and they had turned 100, and she invited us to this presentation they had, 100 years of the Women's City Club. And it was much more entertaining than I was anticipating. Like we went to be nice to our neighbor, and it was a great presentation, about the history of women in Grand Rapids, the history of that club in Grand Rapids. So there's just cool things happening that, that are supported by the community as a whole, I think. So we have Symphony. The Symphony is great too. They like to do fun things where they will play the music live to different like movies and that sort of thing, to try and kind of modernize it a little bit. But they do things with the symphony chorus where there's also, singers involved with it. So I think it's a very well-rounded community for being a smaller city. We have a lot of great things here, and that's really what I love. Is you can still have it all, but it's not super huge, which is great.
Yeah, and I'm so excited to hear the kind of stuff you're talking about, right? Because I mean, I've been to Grand Rapids. I know the feeling. It's a great community. There's lots of stuff going on. I always feel welcome there. And I'm interested from your side. I know we spoke about the endorphins and all that kind of stuff earlier, but what do you think makes you stay so active? Is it because what is that feel good factor that you get out of it? Is it because I know you're not getting paid to do it? It's just something you're passionate about.
Yeah.
What is that response that you get from this from the world that makes you feel that I want to keep doing this?
That's great. I've mainly FOMO. I'm just kidding. It's like I don't want to see something and be like, oh, how did I miss it? But no, I just, I like to learn, I go to trivia. I love, a good little trivia question. I like Jeopardy, that sort of thing. I like learning new things. I like to be knowledgeable about where I live. I like to tell people cool things. So I think it's just, I always want to know more. I think that's really what keeps me going to go to all this stuff. So, yeah.
I mean, it's really exciting. I think I've taken notes of a couple of things you've really said for my next trip to Grand Rapids. So I'm very excited, and there's always new things to do there. I am excited for the soccer stadium. That's going to be very, very cool.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see, like you said, like the Grand Rapids Rise. They're doing really, really well. You've got the Gold as well. That are exciting new team that are coming in there. So there's always something to do in Grand Rapids. Put it that way. So very, very cool. I don't have any more questions on my side. Maybe I'll just hand over to you. I'm sure you've got a couple of things that you still want to go through.
All right, here's the second part of the podcast here. So I actually wanted to get back to one piece, which was about, people who are, new to GR.
Yeah.
Let's imagine a scenario. You have not lived in Grand Rapids. You are totally new, a different Kara who's lived in, I don't know, somewhere else and just moving into Grand Rapids. What would you suggest to her to make connections with people? Like, where should she go? What should she do? In order to, like, let's say does not have a particular hobby, but just wants to connect with people and make friends. Do you recommend, obviously, if I say, do you recommend picking a hobby, you'll be like, try dancing. But, just in general, like maybe short few tips of places and things that would help them connect with the local community.
Yeah, that's a great question. I know I feel like I'm not like in the young professional category anymore, but I think there is a network for young professionals. So if I was someone who was new, I might, recommend, hey, I'm going to look for this group that might meet for like a happy hour, right? Because that's at least a good place to connect with people who might be new, might be looking to break into the community, meet people who are working at different places, just to kind of get a perspective. But then, if I didn't have a hobby, I'm trying to think. I might, look up if there's different shows or performances or that sort of thing that might have like a pre or post kind of meetup or get together. I know like run clubs are really popular. Like I have friends who've moved to other cities. And so because they, it was COVID, right? So when they moved, a lot of them. So because of that, people were exercising outside. So they found their community through like a run club or that sort of thing. I am very active. I do go to the gym regularly. So that I might recommend joining a gym, going to classes, doing something, where you're not just working out by yourself. Something along those lines where there's an activity associated with it, right? So you can start conversation, but also like if it's not vibing, you can go do something else too. So
yeah, perfect. Thank you. So are you ready for some, rapid fire questions?
Yes, I will do my best. Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's go. Can you describe Grand Rapids or the Grand Rapids vibe in 3 words?
3 words. I'm going to say exciting. Exciting, energetic. I'm only thinking of E words. Cool.
Love it. So
both literally and figuratively.
Yeah, no, I hear you. So the second question. So somebody's new to Grand Rapids, and what's the first place you send them to or you take them to?
Bistro Velveeta's happy hour.
And why?
It's great. They have cheap pizza, cheap cocktails, cheap wine. Very, very good all around.
Love it. Okay. What's the most underrated aspect of Grand Rapids community?
The most underrated aspect, I think, is how much there is to actually do. I think there's different things that drive people to the city, and then once they get here, they see there's a whole lot more to it. So I think we get a lot of people visiting because of beer and that sort of thing, and then they get here, they're like, oh, this actually is pretty fun. So yeah. And
the last question. If Grand Rapids was a movie, which one would it be and why?
Oh, wow. If Grand Rapids was a movie. So there was, before when the state had some great movie credits, there were quite a few movies filmed in Grand Rapids. And I forget what the one was called, but it was like a comedy. And Jesse Eisenberg is in it, and this other comedian is in it. I don't know. I forget what it was called, but it would not be that movie because it was like a gangster movie. But but they mentioned Mr. Burger, which is like a Grand Rapids staple. So that's immediately what I think of when I think about movies from Grand Rapids. But yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if I can come up with one. I've been watching too many TV series. I think that's my problem. Is I
Well, then
haven't,
How about, yeah.
I'm like, and the
You-
movies that I watch are like really cheesy rom-coms. So
what about
it could be,
what
it
about
probably could be a Hallmark Christmas movie where someone comes back to Grand Rapids and finds the true meaning of Christmas. Something along those lines. I think Grand Rapids could do that for you.
I love that. That's a good one. That's a very good one. Well, Josh, you sound like you have another question there, but
I was going to
if
say,
not,
well, if
I'm
it was
going
a,
to
I
wrap
was going
up.
to say if it was a TV series, then what TV series would it be? I'm
Yeah,
interested now.
exactly.
I'm interested to know now. Like you still know what to do is fine. Like give me a good TV series that you'd like to be based on Grand Rapids.
That's a good question too. A TV series, I feel, because like so many of them like take place in like big cities, like Friends and Seinfeld and that sort of thing. Like that's like a New York. I'm trying to think.
It's fine. Like imagine, like, do you picture, like, would The Office, for example, kind of depict Grand Rapids, or would, like,
yeah, it could for sure. Yeah, one of
the
those
British one or the American?
one of those TV series, that has people with like the live, the live interview. Yeah, one of those types of series for sure. Yeah, someone in the furniture industry, right? And it's like an office type interview.
I mean, I do feel that, and I'll keep off this one, but like, if you take a look at Friends in isolation, and not that it's happening like in a big city, I do feel that it's a good representation of how I feel when it comes to Grand Rapids, because I know that I can go into a local coffee shop and speak to someone and have a good chat, and I do feel like a local when I am there. So I think they do a very good job of welcoming people into their circle. So something like that, or like Cheers, for example, like everyone knows your name. Like it's a very, very kind of like local.
Those neighborhoody shows. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. All right, okay, I'm done.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was a great conversation, Kara. I feel like we could keep going forever. I've got a zillion other questions, so it's like we would love to have you again and maybe dive a little deeper, into not just Grand Rapids but community in general, because I think these insights were absolutely wonderful. Definitely next time I'm going to Grand Rapids, you will expect an email from me like, hey, what do you suggest? So thank you so much for being here with us today. It was a great pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, nice to see you guys.
If people want to follow you, find anything you're doing, like, is there any place they should check out, LinkedIn, social media, anything?
I'm probably most active on Instagram, where my name is Little BKP. So like the buzz, yeah.
Love it. That's amazing.
Thanks so much.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.